Hello and welcome to another episode of the Property Lifestyle Mastery podcast. I'm Jackie Tomes, and on this show we are having open and honest conversations about building a property business that ultimately creates cash flow and freedom from those that have been there and done it, the highs, the lows and the lessons in creating the holiday every 6 weeks life. We're doing everything right from the big picture strategy, maximising your potential, right down to practical solutions. And today's episode is all about how you can revolutionise your relationships with candour, vulnerability and authenticity. And I love this episode because it kind of brings together how you're approaching your relationships, but also puts a really great structure around it as well, and how you fit that into your team strategy. So it kind of encompasses so many different elements that are important to us here at Property Strategy. And so myself and Dave really open up about the journey that we've been on to being more candid, how we use that with our team and with other people in our lives, how it's transformed our marriage as well, as an aside. It's a really great conversation and you're really going to love it. So without further ado, let's do it. Hello, my darling husband.
Hello.
The culture of today's conversation, the topic of today's conversation is candour. So what is candour and why is it important?
Good question. Very good question.
Would you like me to answer it?
I think I would actually. Yeah. I think you're much more candid than I am. So
I have no idea what you're saying. You idiot! No, that's not what candour is. That is bad candour. So this conversation's been sparked today because we see a lot of instances for how people are working and collaborating with others and what works well and what doesn't work well. And it's also a journey we've been on ourselves as well when it comes to how we work and collaborate with people. So the idea today is candour. And where I first actually heard about this was in a book by called No Rules, which is by Reed Hastings and Erin Meyer. He's the guy that started Netflix, and how they have used the culture of candour in their business to be able to improve how they work together. So the idea of candour is that it's about being honest with the people around you when things are maybe not going to plan how you want it to, not to be an asshole, but to essentially help other people around you to grow and evolve and do a better job. Mm-hmm. So it's about how you give feedback to others, is what it is.
Yeah. Okay.
And why is it important?
Oh, big question there as well.
Would you like me to answer it?
No, I'll have a go, and then you can add to it.
Okay.
So what we see in people all around us and what we see in ourselves is that as soon as you aren't candid, those who you're working with, you end up with two problems. One is you end up with a well of kind of resentment that builds up. You end up with all these thoughts that are going through your mind that aren't being said, and it creates a full massive barrier between you and that person, which will only ever be bad for your communication in general, and actually it creates a negative barrier. The barrier is not a positive one. So everything you start saying gets filtered through this barrier to that person, and it becomes a real problem, right? Because then they're not going to be able to hear what you're saying properly because it's not what you're really meaning. So that's the one side. And on the other side, that person is not being given the opportunity to actually make impactful change that will mean that the working relationship's better, change that means they're able to provide you with what you're looking for, change in a way that they might need to know about. And if no one's being candid with them, they have no idea that what they're doing is a problem. Mm-hmm. So you're literally robbing someone of the ability to evolve, to become better, which I think is a sin. It's a sin when it comes down to it, right? Because you're basically holding people down. You're tamping down their ability to grow and evolve, which is so sad.
And I think let's start by thinking about this through the lens of people that we're working with, like team members. So that could be people who you've kind of employed. I've used that in loose terms. It could be like a virtual assistant, someone who kind of works for you, but it can also be external, like outsourced providers. Yeah. So whether let's have some examples. That could be your accountant, your solicitor,
quantity surveyor, your builders,
etc. Yeah. So let's think about it through the lens of this, because I think that starts to make it a bit more tangible what we're talking about here. Yeah. So if we just maybe rewind to our first ever example of hiring a virtual assistant, which I think we have touched on maybe a little bit in the past. That's an absolute disaster, right? She was a really sweet lady, and she was really trying her best, but she wasn't really bringing what we needed. But this was like 2016?
I thought you were going to say 20-something years ago.
It was 20 years ago. I'm 7 years old.
2016, 2015.
And she wasn't doing a very good job, but we weren't being candid with her. So she was providing substandard work, and we were basically tiptoeing around the fact that she was doing substandard work. And like, we were kind of giving feedback, but in a really nice way. It was like, oh, you haven't quite done this right. I'm not sure if maybe I haven't explained it very well. And we were kind of going, like, tiptoeing around the fact that it was absolutely terrible, the work output that we'd received.
So bad.
It was really bad. And this kind of went on for a ridiculous amount of time. When I look back, how many months did that go on for? Maybe 3 or even 6 months.
Yeah, 3 to 6 months.
Oh my God, that would just never happen now. 3 to 6 months of us like tiptoeing around, trying to give little bits of feedback in a really positive way, but not really sharing our level of dissatisfaction and what we really could see was wrong. Eventually, Dave's like the really, if you haven't already got it, the really calm, patient one. And if I didn't have Dave, I would be so fiery. Like, I do see in some of our clients who are similar profile to me, they can be so fiery. And I'm like, oh gosh, I can so see that ability within myself. But you basically you just pour a little bit of water on and just chill me right out. Eventually, I lost my shit. And I was like, she's got to go. Like, she's fired. And I'd never fired someone before. And I remember, oh God, I got on the phone with this, just such a sweet lady, got on the phone, and basically out of the blue I was like, this isn't working, we can't work together anymore, I'm really sorry that you're fired. I'd like written out this whole speech that I was going to deliver, and just basically launched through my speech, and then she started to reply and said something like, I don't know, oh, like, thank you for the opportunity or something. I don't know what I did, but basically like, oh, okay, sorry, bye, and just basically hung up on her. Absolutely awful. And that was it. She was also really shocked, right? I think she then sent an email afterwards. The way that she responded was a bit weird. She was really shocked at what had happened. Like, she had no idea that I was about to lose my shit and fire her. And that is what I've now come to realise, that's not okay. Like, if someone doesn't know that there's a problem and they haven't been given that opportunity to evolve, the candour had been missing in this relationship. Anything to add to that situation?
No, it was awful. It was the worst firing ever, and we felt awful about it as well, because I think that's the other thing. In a way, deep down, even though we didn't know how to handle it, we knew that wasn't going to be an enjoyable experience, but somehow I think deep down we also knew that it was a surprise for her. Like you kind of think, how can it be a surprise? But no, it did feel very disconnected, the firing from the previous experience. It's like we hadn't given her enough feedback and opportunity to evolve, so we weren't clear. And it means that you actually feel way worse about the firing. So it felt horrible to us.
It did.
And it was awful.
So anyway, it's been a journey since then, and we have that was maybe just during COVID that we started finding out about this idea of candour and what it meant, because what had essentially happened in that initial situation with that lady that I described, she had the lack of honest feedback about how it was going from me had meant that she didn't know what she needed to work on or improve, and therefore I'd kind of been holding back all the stuff that I really wanted to say, which essentially then it just built up, as you said, this like well of resentment, this kind of anger that just came then eventually just like flying out of me in a fit of rage. So what we've learnt with candour is the importance of giving constructive feedback essentially as soon as possible through the process of working with someone, to be able to make sure you are never allowing things to basically go unsaid. And what's the difference when you start to do that?
Well, it really opens up the relationship, right? Because nothing's ever simmering in the background, and you get to if you can start doing it, you actually get to a place where as soon as something comes to you, you get on a call, you get in a meeting, whatever, and you immediately say it, and the person, it gets used to getting that feedback, so it stops being an emotional thing. And I think that's one of the most important things here, is doing candour in a proper way, in a positive, proactive way, takes the negative emotion out of it. Because in the end, giving feedback to someone about something not being good enough doesn't have to be nasty. It doesn't have to be filled with like this horrible, nasty.
And actually, that's really important, right? It's like if it's filled with those things, that is not candour.
No.
Candour is always in the best interest of the other person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that people get scared of, or you're really worried about how the other person's going to react, and people get confused between the idea of being direct and candid and being nasty. And it's true. Like if you tell someone the truth, you do it in a nice way, that's not nasty. It's just candid. And if you can get it going like that, if you can get used to doing it, eventually it's like a immunity program. more times you do it with someone, the more they get comfortable with it, and the less they take offence at perceived offence. And I do think that's why it's called the culture of candour, because culturally we're not used to it. So you have to create this environment where someone becomes used to it and no longer becomes an insult to tell someone the truth, which is ridiculous. We have that in our culture, like you hide, you tiptoe.
It's kind of, we've some weirdly connected, like being honest and sharing the truth is somehow being connected with being rude.
Yeah.
Which, that's not true. Like being mean is I don't know, they're not the same thing. And it's been a really big shift for us to start to do that. So someone like the rules around candour are that it's, and there's if you're interested in this, definitely read the No Rules book, because it kind of like has loads of examples and brings to life, like, gosh, it's how Netflix have actually, one of the big reasons that they've done so well, and removes a lot of need for micromanagement in the same way, because everyone's just giving each other feedback all the time. We're not as good as Netflix at it, for sure, but we are working on it day by day.
Always working on it.
And yeah, so some of the rules are you have to give the feedback as close to the moment as possible that the incident occurs that you want to give feedback about, and so that can be a challenge, right? Like particularly if you're working with a virtual team, like we're a totally virtual team. If you're like, okay, how do you do it? So that's something that we've had to be getting used to being able to do. So finding ways to, I use a lot of voice notes to do it these days. Like I would have not done it before, but if you can set it up in the right way and you're doing it always in the best interest of the other person, actually it's fine. So that, finding a way to do it quickly as possible and not basically build up a massive hit list of issues that you kind of want to raise with someone, and you don't have another one-to-one discussion with them for like 2 weeks, and then it just looks like you've been harboring all of these things, and also you kind of forget the exact situation, so it loses its power. And also normally the moment at which that feedback is the most helpful is as close to in the moment as possible. So it actually talks about in the Netflix book that a lady giving a presentation, and her colleague realises that she's losing the room with how she's doing it. Now, most of us would just like sit and watch and maybe cringe that was happening. But in this scenario, the person stands up and just says, just so you know, you're losing the room, like some kind of feedback about what was actually happening. And it meant that the person was able to adjust her presentation in the moment based on that feedback.
That's amazing. And actually hearing you say that almost makes me, even though I'm used to this, cringe inside a little bit. Like I hear that story, I'm like, I can just imagine someone taking huge offence to that. If it was me doing the presentation and someone said that to me, it's like they're insulting my presentation, right? That's what that's what we're so used to feeling. And I think that's the magic of instilling this as a standard culture, because it takes away that feeling. And as soon as you can get rid of that feeling, it just becomes part of like, okay, great, I'll move on, I'll try a different thing. Let's try something else. And as soon as it becomes, because that's the nature of problem solving, isn't it? You look at, the problem comes up, the first job is not to ruminate on what that issue is, it's to work out what the solution is. And in this case, if you feel like you're losing the room and you get upset with it, it's like all you're doing is worrying, getting emotional in some way about the problem. Oh, I'm losing the room. Oh, it's really annoying, and feel bad. But really, it's just straight on to, okay, what do I do about this? What's the solution? And we all know that's a great way to be. If you can be constantly on the solution first, everyone knows that's a brilliant way to be. But somehow we find it hard to enact.
Yeah, I hear praise publicly, criticise privately, or something kind of along those lines, and it kind of goes against that principle. But the idea is it's not criticising, It's just giving some in the moment feedback that will help that person to improve or help them to serve the business better, which does ultimately help them to improve. And if they improve and serve the business better, then ultimately they're going to progress, they're going to have more opportunities, they're going to get pay rises. Like, it's in the best interest of that person to understand how they can be of better service to the business or themselves. So therefore, then the more we can do that in front of each other, and it's not like you're not taking someone down, you're not dragging them down, you're just helping them improve in the minute.
I think that concept you've just described is the end result of practice.
Yeah.
And that's why when you say that story about Netflix, and I feel it cringe inside, it's because we haven't practiced it enough to get to that level. And I don't think I could do that in a meeting in front of other people. I almost wouldn't know how best to articulate it in that environment, and I'd also struggle to see how they're going to how it's going to impact them, because also you say that to someone, it does, your fear is you undermine their confidence, and you undermine they feel really bad about it, and actually ruins the rest of the presentation because they're suddenly feeling really self-conscious. That's the bad version of it. So you have to build up to that. That's why growing this culture, getting used to it, building it to become normal every day, second nature for everyone, means that suddenly when you do something like that, that's the highest level of it. That's why Netflix are a genius, right? They've brought it to that highest level that they can do that and it's not hurting anyone.
I'm sure it hurts some people sometimes, but you know, the opposite also hurts people. So it's more insidious and you don't see it quite as obviously.
Yes.
I think I'm pretty good at doing it in meetings. Like, I will just say to someone in a meeting, maybe not, I haven't ever done it to someone giving a live presentation in front of 100 people. Like, I agree, I'm not at that level either. But I do it in team meetings. If I see something that I feel is not right, I'll just, explain it and say it, which is good for me in terms of, like, we're running 3 businesses. I don't know how many team members, 18 team members, something like that. There's a lot going on, and there isn't, and we both have a lot of creative tasks to do and a lot of things going on. For me, the more that I don't give that feedback in the moment, the more it's kind of like baggage. It kind of like builds up and it distracts me and it makes other tasks harder to do. And so for me, it just kind of frees my headspace there and then. Just get it done. Just get it out there, do it with kindness, give that feedback to the person and then let it go and get on with your day. Yeah. But if I don't say it, it builds. It builds. And like we see it in clients that we work with, both the initial not such a good way that you kind of have to go through, where same thing as us with that lady that I mentioned, you just don't give feedback, you're getting really hacked off that someone's not doing well enough until you blow up, the person is like so freaked out, had no idea they weren't doing a good enough job, and then it just ends really nastily. But then I've also seen someone who's been through that and then they've hired a new team member and they've set up from the very beginning, they've read the Netflix book, and they've basically set this up with the new person from the very beginning. They've said, look, I'm going to be candid with you. I'm only going to be saying this to you because I want you to grow and improve and I want you to get my feedback. I will always try and do it kindly. Sometimes I might miss the mark. I don't mean to. Like, I only want to give you the feedback so that you can help and grow. I will give you the feedback in the moment, so you might get it via a voice note. So just know that to expect that, and that this, don't take it the wrong way, and set it up from the very beginning. And the person that I'm thinking of has been doing this now for maybe 6 months. It is night and day, the difference that she's getting with this team member compared to the last one. The last one she was annoyed about, wasn't delivering, wasn't giving the feedback, and it's just like, I'm just like, what's the point of this person? The new person, she's like, I love her. She is amazing. Like, she's doing a really great job. Yeah, she's not perfect, but no one actually is. And she's just a raving fan of this person. And there's a few other things as well, but I'd say 50% of that or more is candor.
That's amazing, isn't it? And actually, when I hear that story, I'm just like, isn't it crazy that we don't do this naturally? Because I'm just thinking about those scenarios when I'm working with a client and they say like, oh, this person's really crap at this, they're doing a really bad job at this, it's really annoying me. And you know what the first question we always ask as the mentor is,
have you given feedback?
Have you told them? Like, what are you doing about this? Have you told them? It's like, I haven't told them.
Oh, you get that. I know I get more of the sheepish reply. Maybe it's because I've said it enough times now. They're like, oh no, she's called me again.
Like, what else are you going to do? Like, Just sit there, have someone do bad, and then just fire them.
And then
That's
basically
natural.
come and waste time bitching to us about it. Like, just go and tell them. But people really struggle to make the transition. I think we both struggled. Potentially, I think I found it easier to adopt than you did.
Yes.
So what helped you to shift that perspective and to start to do it?
I think the realization that the person can't actually improve. You know, they can't grow into their role. They'll never be good, and that's not good for us. That's not good for them. That if you don't do it, your team hiring strategy is to look for the needle in the haystack all the time. The one person in a billion who will somehow magically hit all your buttons and doing it all perfectly first time.
And magically know what they're not doing that would not be to your satisfaction.
Yeah, and they're just good enough that you're happy with them through all time. But that is just never going to happen. So
I think we've got a really good team, and I think this is partly because of this. Maybe again, I don't know what a percentage. A good chunk of it is because we have your patience and tenacity for one, but it's the feedback, and it's interesting. I've had some people who have not created a culture of candour, and I hear how much of a struggle they're having. We'll talk about that in a minute, what happens when you don't. I'm having a massive struggle, and then I'm like, have you given feedback? Have you given feedback? I say it about 8 times, and eventually they start giving feedback, and then, you know what happens? They get better.
yeah, it's crazy.
Look, so-and-so's doing a lot better. I thought I was going to have to fire them, but actually, they're doing a lot better. And it as if by magic, suddenly this person goes from being like totally in the firing line to being like, okay, maybe this isn't a total lost cause. And just imagine what that person could be like if that's how it had always been from the very beginning, and they started working with you and you were consistently doing it day in, day out, week in, week out.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So did I cut you off from a question that we previously
No,
asked?
but you were saying what happens.
Oh, how did you get into it?
No, we went past
You answered that
Jax.
one, right,
We covered
fine.
that. You actually said what happens when you don't do this.
Yeah, exactly what you said.
So Jax, what happens when you don't do this?
That's a great question, Dave. What made you think to ask that? So when you don't do this, okay, so the most extreme example is you have people working for you, but they aren't actually really bringing anything to you. They you get to the point that you're potentially micromanaging everything that they're doing. They don't there's no trust between the two of you in terms of your ability to think that they can deliver, so you end up having to sign up everything that they do. They ask you questions about everything comes back to you, and it doesn't get better with every time that process happens. Like, it's just the same, and it becomes more and more overwhelming, and you're paying these people to work for you and help you, but actually you'd be better off doing it yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an extreme example.
So that's the team side of it. But then I would say what happens to you if you don't do it is you actually build up almost like it's like a pressure cooker inside. You end up, because you're not continually releasing these thoughts into the person, and it's all negative, you just build up this pressure cooker of negativity, and you end up pretty much exploding in some way or another, or getting really frustrated, or just feeling like what's the point, and giving up on a team altogether. And these kinds of things do happen. The end result, you just think, I can't do it, teams, no one's any good, no point. And it's like you lose your faith in the ability to work with people in many ways. You don't think anyone's ever good enough. Just none of them are going to be capable. What's the point? And that happens not just with team members, but that can happen with builders, with professionals, solicitors. It gives you a very jaded view of humans as well.
Yeah, you're right. You lose your trust in others.
Yeah.
And you can't work like that.
Yeah.
Well, you can, but it's miserable.
So I guess I'd like to go down that line of saying, what makes this so hard? Like, we're obviously saying it's hard because you're struggling to you don't want to hurt people. That's the surface level. I don't want to be rude to someone. I can't say that to them. It's going to be taken the wrong way, right? Why is that so hard?
Why are we so scared of it being taken the wrong way?
Yeah, why are we so worried about
Because we want
this?
people to like us.
That's it, right? The overview summary is we want people to like us. Why do we want people to like us?
Because if you keep going down that why, I want people to like me, because if people don't like me, then I won't have any friends, I won't have any family, I'll be totally alone. And if you go back to I think Don called it the days of yore or something like that. I don't know if it's quite the days of yore, but the caveman days. If you had no one and you were totally alone, you would die.
Yeah.
So that's that is the deep subconscious fear that we...
You ran through that one, didn't you?
Onto
Ran
that.
through those fears.
You're welcome to slow that down a little bit if you want. Rewind.
It's true. Like our DNA, our kind of genetic way of being is based on survival. And that survival comes from our caveman roots, our, even before that, potentially our amphibian brain, the brain that is making sure that we don't die. And that has been programmed in such a way that we always react as if it's a life-threatening situation. And what you've just described is basically being ostracized from your society is the same in those days was a death sentence. You couldn't survive in the wild on your own, and that's what we're up against. We're up against this idea that if people don't like us and we don't keep ourselves ingratiated and in the culture of those around us and keeping them happy, that actually they're going to leave and we'll end up on our own. And yes, the survival mechanism kicks in.
So there you go, there's Dave's answer versus Jackie's answer. That's why they call you Detail Dave. So we're scared of not being liked. Actually, as an aside from this, I've just finished reading a book that's called The Courage to Be Disliked. I can't remember the name of the author right now. Sorry, Mr. Author.
We'll write it in the notes. Don't worry.
Will we? Jackie will. That in this book, it puts across basically the idea that out of 10 people, basically 7 people will basically be indifferent towards you. 2 you'll get on really well with and you'll become good friends, and 1 will not like you. Like, that's just fact. Like, we can't stop people from not liking us. Like, there's always going to be some people who don't like us, some people who don't care, and some people that we really get on with. I just think if you just accept that is just a fact and there's nothing you can actually do about it, I kind of was like, okay, well, but actually maybe by being more candid, you actually draw more of the people that you like towards you, because you're actually being more authentic.
Well, I think it all stems from this thing that we think that being, like, this was your point at the beginning, candour is not actually about being mean or nasty or negative or any of those things. We have made this association with it as being rude, which is not true. That if you are candid and direct with people, there's no reason they wouldn't like you. I know lots of people who are candid, and I would say oh yeah, and it's I'm going to say the word she here, because the ones I'm thinking of are usually female.
Am I included in this?
You are.
I think I know the other one that you're referring to. The one that I was likened
like
to.
Three or four, yeah.
Dave's got some challenging women in his life.
See, they've already made it negative there.
Sorry, you're right.
You've literally taken my point and pooed all over it.
There you go, candour in action. Noted, Dave.
What I'm trying to say is that I know plenty of candid and direct, ladies, and I would never say about them that means I don't like them as much. I would say that literally, she's very direct. She's a very direct individual. I like her, and actually we've made an association that is not true.
Interesting that why do you think of women over men?
No, because those are my experience.
Oh, I see.
I just somehow am surrounded by more women who are direct than I have men who are direct in my life.
Interesting.
That's just my life experience. Yeah.
Okay, so we make negative associations with.
Yeah, we've made a negative association, and that automatically makes us not want to be candid, but it's not true. Like, actually you can shift your belief system around that, and you can take a different path, train yourself to do it, and weirdly enough, people might like you more. Because I think it stops you connecting with people. I think if you're not candid, and especially if you're a people pleaser, and you actually end up a people pleaser who has a lot in the background, a lot of thoughts that aren't being said, you're one of those, I actually think that creates a barrier, like I said at the beginning, between you and other people, and they notice it. You've got that feeling of that, there's a lot going on behind the eyes with that one. Oh, she seems really nice. I say she. I'll say he this time. He seems really nice, but I just don't feel like it's all true. And actually you've created a barrier, and I think that we ignore that.
And let's just say we have connected being direct with being rude generally in our culture.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about the fact about how not being direct is actually far ruder. you have got someone working for you, in this example, who wants to do a good job for you. They want a good job. They want to progress. They want to please you, and you are not letting them.
Yeah.
You are holding back feedback that would help them to do a better job. And if they can do a better job, they could be with you for years. And you're
taking that away from them.
Taking that away from them. Your lack of being direct is actually incredibly selfish. It's incredibly rude. I would propose, just as an, yes, I'm just sort of
Getting
flipping
rather
around.
direct here.
I'm just saying it is. You can look at it from the other angle and just say it is rude to not put this across.
Yeah.
And what opportunities are you taking away from the people around you because you're so worried about them not liking you? But ultimately, it's probably also going to not like you a heck of a lot more when you actually fire them out of the blue.
To just leave them.
Yeah.
I'd like to actually move away from team.
Yes, fair enough, yep.
I think let's go through a few different aspects, because what I realised when we started doing this was that there's parts of our relationship where we were already doing this, and it had helped our relationship full stop. And in a way, it was just a matter of extending that familiarity that we had to other people.
Yep.
And we'd already worked out how to be direct and
By
candid.
we, you mean husband and wife?
Husband and wife, yeah, but potentially business partners as well, right?
Yeah.
I'd say it's massively helpful in your closer relationships in life if you can just learn to be candid, because it just solves so many problems, right? What would you say when we were going through our own evolution as a couple and into business partners together? At what point do you think candour became very important to us?
Oh gosh,
So I really
that's a
hit you
really
with that
hard
one.
question. At what point? Do you have an answer to that?
Yeah.
Can you give it? Because nothing's coming to me.
Nothing's coming. I would say, we went through, when you go, it's particularly for us going from being just married to working together, seeing that evolution from being able to, when you're just married and you're not working together, you get a lot of time apart. You're generally going off and working in different environments. You're not together all the time. And one of the big shifts was the fact that we went to being together a lot. And the little things that happen all the time in a marriage, like, maybe I don't put the washing on.
You leave your pants on the floor.
Yeah, don't.
You still do that.
Do the bed. Yeah.
You put them near the washing basket.
Yeah, it's close enough. But yeah, all the little things that any relationship has to manage, they become actually more apparent because you're around each other all the time. And then they also bleed into the work, because then the same similar things are happening in the work, like how people approach the work coming up. It then escalates. So we had to, I guess within the first year of working together, I felt like we had to put more boundaries down, and those boundaries had to come from candid conversations. And the practice was how to have those conversations without it being an emotional event, i.e. a fight, right? And the problem is you can't just constantly have fights all the time. You can't just be like,
It just wastes a lot of time.
It just wastes so much time, and it's much easier if you just have a chat about it and then you choose a new path, right? That's the ideal. And so we had to learn that. We had to learn how to deal with that. And that was, I think, in the first 1 year of, definitely when we went full time, and learning how to just have those conversations. And people wonder how we managed to have such a strong relationship in such close proximity in a motorhome. And I would say candour is pretty much one of the biggest things, because you feel confident and comfortable that everything's been said. And therefore, it's not all there in the ether around you, you're wondering what that person's irritated about. That doesn't happen, We just, it's clean. It's a clean environment. And
I think you're right. I think we were already starting to do that even before we knew it was like the culture of candour as a concept.
Yeah.
I guess maybe what's shifted since we started being aware of culture of candour is probably the speed of reaction of the other person.
yes,
And how they take on that feedback.
yes,
I think that, I think probably Joe Dispenza calls it the refractory period kind of thing, or something, how you respond to that. We went out for dinner a few weeks ago, and you gave me some candid feedback about how I was being Snappy Joe, and he was fed up being snapped at. And I felt myself want to react badly to it,
yeah,
but and I got a bit upset, but I didn't fight you.
No,
like,
it's
I did
very
take
true.
it on board.
I did appreciate not being fought there. And how long was your refractory period there? Because I think that's really important. We were out for a very nice meal. We'd obviously had a really nice time leading up to that moment, and we're sitting there eating our third, fourth course of this 10-course meal or whatever. We've been drinking wine. And how long from the moment you think the negative emotion hit to us coming out the other side?
I think less than 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, 10 minutes is what I was going to say.
Okay. Probably 10 then. Let's, eight-ish.
I think that's damn good.
That is
and
really amazing.
I would say you're right. What you're saying is it's not like there's no negative reaction there, right?
Yeah.
You did react negatively, and we had that tense silence. We had a good tense silence.
No one was slamming any doors or storming out.
No one slammed their glass down and broke it.
No one got any wine in the face.
And it wasn't even too scratchy on the plates, while we ate. It was just more of a tense silence whilst both of us.
Yeah.
Actually, it was both of us, because obviously I have to deal with those emotions too, right? Because whatever I've said and you've now responded, and I know there's negative emotion going on, I then feel that. And then I've got to work through it because I've got my own reaction to that, which is, how dare she be negative? I've just given her some candid. I've just told her the truth. How dare she be annoyed at me?
She's been banging on about cultural candor for years. Now I do it to her. Now this is what I get.
I mean, obviously those thoughts aren't really going through my
Yeah.
head, but we all have the inner dialogue, which is basically the brain coming up with as many different reasons why you should righteously have annoyance, right? The righteous anger at the other person is being, the dialogue is telling you that.
Yeah.
And I've got to deal with that too. And then energetically, I'm definitely going to be feeling your emotions. They're going to be bleeding off you onto me. So I'm also that's going to be bubbling away there. So the tense silence is literally the necessary process of both of us feeling those emotions through, trying to let them go and letting them dissipate, and then coming through the other side so that when we restart the conversation or whatever we want to talk about, we can start afresh.
And I guess, I appreciated the feedback. I hadn't really spotted it in myself what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I was snapping at you about things that wasn't helpful. And that's not the person that I want to be. I don't want to be the person that snaps at anyone, least of all you. But until someone actually tells you, you get away with it, right?
Yeah.
Obviously me snapping at you is not going to make you feel good, and if you just don't say it, I kind of almost think, or maybe I haven't snapped.
Yeah.
I've not done anything that is not
acceptable to
acceptable
the other person.
Yeah, and so therefore I'll just continue to do it. And if you just kept taking it, and I would just go,
well, that's the normal, isn't it? You either take it. The normal relationship method is take it. Massive argument. Massive argument. And then it's kind of all gets thrown in amongst loads of other stuff because you're so angry. How could it just be about the snapping? And it somehow you then start coming up with loads of other things. But the job there was try and tell you without anger or annoyance or emotion, just by the way, you've been very snappy recently, and it hasn't been so enjoyable.
Yeah, and I don't want to be that, and that's been really. I don't think I have snapped at you since we had that conversation.
You haven't. You've done really well.
So therefore that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't know if that was maybe the fourth or fifth time that I'd snapped at you.
It wasn't many. It was over a couple of days. That was all. It just felt like it bled into the next day. I was like, actually.
It's time to
get this one out
there. Okay, so that's with anything else from a relationship.
No, I wanted to move on now to looking at. I think that pretty much sums up how you can approach it in a relationship.
I guess one thing I would say is maybe it kind of leads into it, but I feel like if you aren't being candid with the other people in your life, I feel it's more likely to be fiery in your primary kind of love relationship. Because I think if you're not telling all of the people around you the things that you can see that you'd like them to improve, it basically gets pent up in you, and you end up throwing it at the one person who you can be direct with, but rude direct,
nasty.
Yeah. And I think it has been a lot easier to be just nicer to you, basically.
You're right. People again question, how do we spend so much time together and still get on so well? And it is partly down to just being more candid with other people. Then you don't build it up, don't take it out on each other. Simple as. There's no pressure cookers here.
No.
Yeah. So I wanted to go on to just talking about more of the business relationships we have. So I know in property we work with investors a lot, and I think that's quite, and clients, investors and clients generally, right?
When we say clients, generally for us, it's like generally mentees.
Yeah, mentees, investors, and well, they're not. Well, I would say an investor is a kind of client, aren't they?
Yeah.
And then these types of people. So, from your perspective, how do you bring candor into those relationships?
Can we start with mentees?
Well, mentees is let's start with mentees because obviously that has a different dynamic to one's. It's more of a, you're more dominant in that relationship than you are in, say, the working with an investor, where it's more of a service you're giving. So I don't know, maybe that's how I see it.
Yeah, I don't. I like the other thing they cover in the book that I've just been reading, this Courage to be Disliked, this idea that there are no
levels.
We're all on the same level. No one is better or worse than anyone.
Well, I'm taking it back. I'm taking what I just said back. Okay. Retracted,
Candor
Jackie.
in the moment on a podcast.
Start me with the mentees. Go on.
I think the more we have brought in the moment candor with our mentoring clients, I think the results get better and better, because there's so few people in your life that are truly honest with you about what they can see, particularly when there's like a respectful relationship where you both, you want to work together. You want, like, I want the person to succeed in what they're doing, and they'd come to me because they respect my opinion, our opinion, and to be able to honestly give feedback about where this person is being a bit blindsided or self-sabotaging, and to put that across honestly in the moment, it's transformational. And it's something that I definitely, used to hold back from. It's rude. Is that appropriate to say to that person? And I definitely didn't always say what I saw with clarity to them, because I didn't want to be rude. But actually you're doing people a disservice by holding back and trying to somehow be polite. Whereas actually if you just lay it out always with the fact that you want this person to bloody well nail it and really achieve the things that they want to go after, like, we're in such a privileged position to be able to give that feedback, and because of that respect that's there, it's more likely to be received and taken on board.
Made me think about, because I feel like we've gotten better and better at this, and I've definitely struggled with it more than you, right? Being the less direct one, and I definitely, it has to be done in the right way, and the way we do it isn't always right for every single person. And I have experienced with one client in particular where I've done it in a way that hasn't gone down well, and
Dave's so mean.
And so it's fine, and that's the thing, is like it's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to be right. And it definitely, over a period of time, the type of candor I was giving was not giving, in this case, her the motivation, the feeling that she needed to be successful. What was interesting, and I think really puts this concept on a pedestal as how great it is, was I felt like she then approached me with candor, and it was almost like it opened up the doorway to say, we'll be candid with you, but also that gives the person license to be candid back. And in that scenario, if she's listening, she'll know who this is. She was candid back with me and explained that it wasn't working, their approach, and we found a new dynamic. And then I feel like that dynamic's been much better ever since, right? So in a way, it's like, just by being that way with someone in any position, it actually opens them to it in a really nice way. They learn, it's classic, like in the negative version of that would be like, oh, if he's going to be so rude to me, I'll be rude back, but actually this wasn't negative. This was like, oh, okay, if he's going to tell me what he thinks, then I'll tell him what I think, how it's affecting me. That's great. And it was a very good constructive conversation in that case. So that's what I would want. I want anyone I'm talking to to be candid back to me about what they're experiencing in life from me, And
obviously, clearly the exact way that you were doing it wasn't quite the right way to get the best out of this person.
Yep.
But obviously it was still being done with love, which why it then came back with love.
Yes.
Which is perfect.
Absolutely.
So anything else from your perspective in terms of giving candour?
I think just what I've learned from that dynamic was that it's different for different people. Like, you can't just nail one method of this is how I am. There is an element of taking the other person into account, and how are they responding to you? You've got to take that into account and somehow adjust your candour. It doesn't mean don't be candid. It just means adjust your methods and be aware of that.
And then what about with investors?
So with investors, I feel like candour has been a way to feel like you are being open and honest about what you need out of that relationship, and open and honest about how things are going, right? And I feel that I've found that with investors, if you're not candid, you get into positions where you're forced into doing things you don't want, and it can build a resentment around it, forced into having to act in a certain way that you're not happy with, that wasn't your intention, and by candour, I think with investors, it's usually more of an upfront expectation setting is a big part of it. But then going down the line, I actually think it's part of the honesty. You got to talk to investors about what's going on, and it's not always good. We're in a business with a lot of things out of our control, and whilst we all enter in with the best intentions, sometimes things don't go to plan. That's life. So how do you approach your investors in a way that feels good, even though what you're giving could feel like bad news, right? And I think that's where I've really benefited from it, because to me, candour is just a matter of approaching those conversations with honesty and being candid about me, how I'm feeling, what's going on, what's happening, what's happened, how I've dealt with it, what the team are doing. Like the whole situation is just a factual exercise of candour, and then just dealing with what comes back, knowing that that's I've found that generally what comes back is very positive. If you just go at it.
Also, you're being open and honest about the challenges and what's going on. Like, people want to help each other, right? Like, you're being vulnerable and being open. You're not putting on a front or a face to it.
Yep.
Like, people do want to support each other, and you've chosen to work together because you like each other.
Yeah.
And like, there's something good that you can do together. So I think I actually was pondering this in the shower earlier, just like with people who, because you see on social media quite a lot at the moment, like people who've had problems with investors, or like problems with investors not getting their money back on deals, deals going wrong. And it does make me think, like, I think there's so few people who really set out with the intention to screw people. I think it's more this lack of ability to be honest when stuff is going wrong, and to be open, and to maybe even ask for help. Because I think if you do that through the journey, if stuff does come up that goes wrong, you explain, you say the situation, the other person knows what's going on. Like, you're communicating honestly about what's happening, and they can respond and adjust. And it might be that there's something that they could do to support the fact that it's not going to plan. Maybe you'd agreed a 12-month loan, but actually if they could do 18, it would mean that the whole project comes to conclusion. It's not exactly what they would have really wanted, but they can see that, stuff's happened and it's out of your control and you're doing your best, and you come to that agreement together. But if you put on a front and just like, it's all fine, it's all great, and it's not, then when stuff, the money doesn't get paid back, the person doesn't understand, they feel like they've been blindsided, and that's where it's poor communication.
Yep.
And then I think the person gets themselves, you end up kidding yourself, I imagine, when you're doing it that way, putting on this front, to the point that it then stuff gets past the point of no return, and that's when the shit really hits the fan.
Yep.
But if you'd have just, as you said, been honest through the journey, people want to help each other.
Yeah. So candour does come in that respect. It's just open, honest conversations about everything else as well, not just about what that person's doing, but about everything else as well, what you're doing.
And I guess in terms of just, how giving people the opportunity to improve. Like, we've been on the other end of someone, maybe not being happy with how we've done something, but they haven't told us, and then all of a sudden they don't want to work with us anymore. And you're like, but I didn't know. Like, I thought everything was fine. You haven't been honest with me, and now you're that annoyed that you're just going to decide that we're not going to work together anymore, but you've not given me any opportunity to address your concerns. Like, it feels horrible.
Yeah. It's so weird when that happens, actually, and we all know that. I think we've probably all experienced that in some form or another at some point. And I've had it recently where I've just been blindsided by something being wrong that I had know about, but no open communication to solve it. And it feels so frustrating. It's really a shame. So yeah, you're right. It just gives people a chance to be the best they can.
And so if you're not happy, explain it with kindness. Let the other person know. Give them the opportunity to improve. And like, it all goes both ways. And if we can all do that for each other and be more honest, to work on delivering it as best as possible so that it comes across with kindness, everyone rises.
Yeah, and what I would say, like in terms of business setting, I feel like the rhythm, Candor can be built in almost as a rhythm. So one area that I've noticed a good rhythmic candor is in my financial management practice, where we have every 6 weeks what we call a process improvements meeting. It's 15 minutes. There's a little questionnaire for the client to fill out, and it's very candid because they have to give us scores in quite a few areas, and then a little blurb as to what could be better. But the point is with that meeting is it's all angled towards self-improvement. It's not what are we doing bad, it's what can we do better. And it means that actually we have very constructive meetings, and they're short hits of constructive every quarter. Every 6, no, not every 6 weeks, it's every quarter. We have those, and you literally sit there on a call with someone, and they score you right then and there, and they're like, give you feedback on where can we improve. And by building that into the process every quarter, they get comfortable with it, and we start to get such better results. We just do a better service because of it, and for every client, because every client has different problems, and it's fascinating to see what one client wants from us and what another client wants. And I can't design a service that serves everyone without that feedback. It'd be a one-size-fits-all approach that basically doesn't serve anyone, right? But by doing that, building in a nice rhythm, it's just regular improvement.
So soliciting feedback and asking for it, and I think giving people a framework is also great for that, right? Yeah. So the final takeaway for people off the back of this conversation.
I would say candor is obviously hugely empowering in all aspects of life and business. I think it makes a huge difference to the results you can get from the people around you, and also the results you can give, the way you can serve and help. And I think the only thing holding us back from it is our own, basically, emotions and and belief systems, our culture that we've been indoctrinated into, which we can get over. We just get over it and find a way through. And other episodes we've done about meditation. If you know that you're holding yourself back, you might as well just go and work on that. It gives you something to work on, right? And you can help yourself evolve. But that is the only thing holding us back from a much better way of working.
So help everyone. You help everyone to improve. You'll improve by doing it. The people you're going to talk to are going to improve by doing it. And ultimately, we're all trying to learn and grow. Like, that's really the whole point of all of this life thing anyway. So yeah, let's all help each other to become better versions of ourselves, and do it with the most compassion and kindness that we possibly can. Love it. I wish you well taking forward the lessons about candor off the back of today's session. Now, I can't quite believe it, but my book is launching next week. The 18th of June. Focus Your Way to Freedom. It is going to be live. It is a no holes barred account of starting up, buying a property, working with investors, and then figuring out how to make cash flow work whilst being able to travel and do deals, and all of the crap that's happened along the way to making all that happen. So this is not some sort of sparkly, just follow a simple system, and none of the raw, honest stuff that's genuinely happened along the way. This is an open and honest, no BS account of what has happened. So I'm really excited for this to be launching on the 18th of June. We've got some amazing giveaways to celebrate this very amazing moment and all the hours that have gone into this book finally being launched. So if you want to be kept in the loop during the launch, go to property-strategy.com/book. You can register to be kept in the loop. We've got thousands of pounds worth of giveaways and prizes to be won. So we'll see you over there, and I can't wait to hear what you think about Focus Your Way to Freedom.